welcome Mr. Ullas Kamath, Joint Managing Director of Jyoti Labs and Chairman FICCI Karnataka State Council to kick off this meeting with a welcome address. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Mr. P.M. Heblikar, former Special Secretary of Government of India, Mr. Christian Verma, former Special Secretary of Government of India, Mr. Sai Pratyush, AVP, Tata Teleservices, Mr. Suresh Ishwar Bulusu, CEO, NextGen Smart Transformation Services, Mr. Deepak Talwar, National Cybersecurity Officer, Microsoft, Mr. Jaideep Ruperelia, CEO and co-founder, Info Percept Consulting, Ms. Sanjana Rathi, founding partner and CEO, Cyber Diplomat LLP, Ms. Alka Agarwal, cybersecurity consultant, Dr. Chinmay Hegde, CEO and managing director, Astricos Consulting Private Limited, Mr. Sainath Volam, InfoSec strategist, distinguished participants from the industry, media, academia, ladies and gentlemen. It's with great pleasure I would like to welcome you all to today's webinar on digital security end-to-end solutions organized jointly by FICCI and Tata Telebusiness Services. The cybersecurity has become an extremely critical part of our everyday life as we are living in a digital world today, and every activity is strongly embedded to the cyber world, and keeping the information of users in a secure network has become a critical challenge these days. The rise of digital technology brings a new level of cyber complexity to the industry. Does the industry have adequate cybersecurity programs in place to prepare for these expanded risks? What solutions and innovative technologies that are in the domain which can be accessed to see the critical information are kept in secure framework are the big questions in front of us. Many companies are seeing an increase in cyber-related incidents associated with the control systems used to manage the industrial and other operations. Risk-based security released their mid-year data breach quick overview report says that there were more than 1,700 publicly reported breaches in the first 6 months of 2021, and that's quite a bit, which exposed a total of 18.8 billion records. However, the decline of reported data breaches does not mean security has improved over the pandemic. Ransomware attacks continue at an alarming pace, inflicting serious damage on the victim organizations that rely on their services. While advantages of the connectivity include increased levels of productivity, faster identification and remediation of quality defects, and better collaboration across functional areas, they also multiply the potential vulnerabilities of the smart organization. As companies seek to create more digital customer experiences, they need to determine how to align their teams that manage fraud prevention, security, and product development so that they can design controls such as authentication and create experiences that are both convenient and very secure. As companies adopt massive data analytics, they must determine how to identify the risk created by the data sets that integrate many types of incredibly sensitive customer information. They must also incorporate security controls into analytic solutions that may not use a formal software development methodology. We believe cybersecurity should be an enabler of rather than a barrier to capturing and extending the value in the digital economy. India's experienced, highly skilled experts help organizations measure their digital resilience, identify and prioritize critical assets for protection and investment, build leadership capabilities to neutralize the threats, and make cybersecurity build or buy decisions. Organizations should consider key steps when beginning to build an effective cybersecurity program, perform cybersecurity measurement, maturity assessment, establish a formal cybersecurity governance program that considers OT, prioritize actions based on the risk profiles. I'm very happy today that FICCI and Tata Telebusiness Services coming together and planning to help the industry, particularly MSME sector, to create a secure business environment in this highly integrated digital era. The phenomenal response that this webinar has received from the enterprises as audience is the best example of how companies look for effective solutions to this menace. We have a galaxy of experts today to deliberate on this subject and guide the companies. I wish all the best to this program and its successful proceedings. Welcome you all once again for this wonderful program. Thank you.
Thank you for the wonderful address, sir. It sets the tone and the pace for the next couple of hours. A lot of interesting discussions around such an important point. And as an opening statement, I can say that it's so important that you have a very large audience right now, and the panel members are excellent in their work as professionals, either in consulting or delivering cybersecurity solutions to various customers and their own organizations. So it's a pleasure for me to host this. Can I request you to introduce our keynote speaker, sir, today for this session, Mr. Heblikar?
Mr. Heblikar?
Yeah. Good morning to everybody who's on the screen. Good day and greetings from Bangalore. It is my proud privilege to be here today among the industry professionals, experts, and stakeholders to share my views, experience, and expertise on a subject that touches our lives significantly, one way or the other, on a daily basis. Unlike most of you, I come from a different team. Intelligence and security have been my bread and butter for over 38 years, and 11 years in the private sector, thus giving me a ringside view of personalities, events, and developments. I wish to leverage some of these into today's discussions. For those of you who have visited Singapore and have traveled by their transportation system, you will find a placard or a slogan, a signage says, "Be prepared, your response matters." I often wonder whether in this critical sector that we talk about today, whether we are prepared. What is our response and how are we going to deal with this? So I think today's event is going to address some of these issues. How are we prepared? Whether we are still in the past, whether we are in the present, and how do we accommodate the future? Secondly, what is our response? Are we aware of the dangers that lurk in cyberspace or in and around physically the country of India? And how do we address these issues? How literate are we on the subjects that we deal on a day-to-day basis? What kind of hygiene do we follow in matters that affect our security, safety, and stability? I think that would be the watchword of today's event. As both Mr. Ullas Kamath and Mr. Suresh Bulusu have set the trend for the discussions today, we have an excellent panel. I will not want to dwell more on them because I'm sure I don't want to steal their clothes. I would like them to, tell us what they do and how they would like to go about today's discussions. But two things certainly stand out. We have no gender bias on this panel. We have two excellent women speakers, both of whom are respected for their views, knowledge of the subject and its technology. Both Alka Agarwal and Ranjana Rathi are there to give us the kind of balance that we require. And of course, the second one is importantly to focus on the professionals who are today present amongst us, who are thought leaders and practitioners, and in one way, change entrepreneurs, people who want to bring a change, people who want to take the profession to the next level. I think this is a very encouraging sign that we have three sets of qualities of the same platform that will deliver our message that is required to be heard loud and clear across the country. When Raju and I discussed this some few weeks ago, and also with Suresh, I was very encouraged by the alacrity of the response. It was ready-made. I didn't have to lean on them to give me an answer. They said yes. So what is the aim of the webinar? The aim of the webinar is to sensitize the participants to the threats and challenges that exist in cyberspace. And the objective is showing long-term perspectives and cost-benefit analysis by adopting safe, secure operating standards and cybersecurity practice. Why I say this is, towards the end of my service in the Government of India, I spent a lot of time focused on information warfare and how we can leverage the existing systems in the Government of India to ensure that we create better safety and security systems where we are able to defend ourselves against inimical actions of people within the country and outside the country. So that was the mission that we were preparing to take India into an age where we could protect ourselves without the assistance of people elsewhere. After all, like Lord Palmerston said, there are no permanent friends, there are no permanent enemies, there are permanent interests. So we need to focus on our interests. What are our interests? How do we secure our interests? And how we develop our interests? How do we leverage this? There are no Americans, there are no Israelis, there are no third countries that should be involved actively and aggressively in our systems. That is my message. That's what the aim and objective of any webinar should be. There is a message also in the webinar, which I would like to convey. The top managements need to be associated, need to be involved directly in cybersecurity related matters. It cannot be a bottom-up approach. Unless the management takes interest in developing its own systems, its own mechanisms, it is not going to have any major effect. There should be accountability. There should be autonomy in working. Above all, there should be a good emphasis on research and development and usability technologies in whatever we do. And this is not a message that is less important. It has been reiterated by several people on several platforms. But having a captive audience today, I thought I will reiterate this. Industry associations, stakeholders need to take account. This has to be dinned into the heads of our people that cybersecurity and security is a matter of utmost interest. If we allow these systems to be, weakened, we are not going to make the progress that is expected of us. I have always said I run a security consultancy company, and I've always said that there should be one point of contact, one point of command for security issues. It should not be the CFO or the COO or the CIO or CTO. Security is a standalone subject. People who are in this mix, they understand their role better than the CFO. I applaud his role, but he also wishes to ensure the company remains healthy and that he would like to make certain amount of adjustments in his financial outlay. But can we do this at the cost of security is a moot question. Then what I would like to take forward is that this webinar wants to bring and will bring newer areas of thought. For example, both Suresh and I have been collaborating on several fronts. We've taken our programs to the government, to the corporate sector, to the private industries. I try to tell them that this is what is needed. Last year, we were part of a webinar series called Deciphering China, where we looked at China's national security policies, how Chinese Communist Party seeks to leverage its various instruments in furtherance of its own interests. And we dealt very, very acutely on China's cybersecurity prowess. Chinese are ahead of us, there is no doubt. Chinese are a threat to us, there is no doubt. there is no doubt that the Chinese have colonized our ICT industry. And we are, I think, now come around to the fact that this particular development needs to be thwarted, if not, defeated. But there, I realize that the kind of knowledge on cybersecurity we have in India, about China, the rest of the world is enormous. That needs to be transformed into action. One or two things that stood out in this webinar was the introduction of a separate chapter called tabletop exercises or command post exercises. Assuming that one of the large companies is affected by a ransomware attack, how does the top management deal with this? Is there going to be a knee-jerk reaction? Or does the company have a plan A? Okay, for my company, I wouldn't want to have only plan A because I don't believe in plan B, because my plan A must succeed. How are we insured? How do we keep ourselves safe? How are we proactive? These are the kind of things that we are trying to inculcate in the minds of top management and management who are on the operational side. Today, digitalization are two important aspects of our IT and ICT development. How are we doing this? So I think as we move along, this webinar also has a lot of messages for the fintech, social media, and social sectors, which is very, very interesting and important for us to ensure that we are able to strike some light on this. As I have always said, that India's strength lies in her human resources, human resource capital. India's strength lies in its human capital in the sense that we are able to think ahead, and we have to translate them into action. And during the course of our last few years of my interaction with Suresh and others, we feel that we are also on par as a developing country, creating the kind of techniques, technologies, and nuances in this field. And some of our even most advanced nations like Australia, Singapore, and Indonesia also have the same issues that we have, but they have been able to resolve them with a lot of commitment from the private sector and the government. So if we are able to look at this webinar and its successors which follow, Suresh, Shaju, myself, and others, we have planned a set of master classes in the aftermath of these webinars at sometime in October, that we would like to take it, sector by sector and try and make it a hybrid thing, whether you meet physically in Bangalore or you can meet virtually. The idea is to bring focus on an important subject. The other sense of optimism in me is that can we aim at becoming a regional cybersecurity center of excellence for SMEs? This is possible. This is doable. Why do I say this? Because as the Prime Minister had said some time back, and some of the senior ministers have also underlined the fact that MSMEs have always been the backbone of Indian economy. They occupy strategic importance in terms of output, exports, and employment. Their contribution is 29% of the GDP. They account for 45% of the manufacturing output and 40% of total exports. I just take you to one sector today which has got a lot of importance, the defense sector. I understand there are over 6,000 MSMEs in the defense sector itself, which are helping the ordnance factories of India, the defense PSUs, right from a pin to components. And these are going to be very proactive in months and years to come. I also understand that 70% of the licenses are being issued to MSMEs in the defense sector. The land systems, naval and aerospace. But as the MSME sector has grown into a huge engine of development for India, It is also vulnerable because it has not developed its systems of protection. Because after all, what is the wealth of a nation or a country? It is its people, the human resources, who are subject to being subverted. It's information, which is a subject of espionage, and it's a manufacturing sector, which is subject to sabotage. So if you don't keep the three of your major assets in secure, you're likely to create grounds for people to fish in your, in your territorial waters. So what I'm saying is, the message to the MSME sector is, we are here to help. We have the kind of synergies that we can bring ahead. Please do reach out to us. And no, we can, to Vicky or the others, create a kind of ecosystem where we can help each other. Please do not for a minute think that I am trying to pitch for any particular area. Mine only is to address the situation as it seems. There are one or two other areas that I would like to touch upon. The thing is, we all have to understand that cybersecurity and its adherence are only a subtext of India's national security. And India's national security, unfortunately, is seen in its narrow military terms. People feel that it is the government of India's responsibility to protect the country from any kind of threats and challenges. But today, the thinking has to undergo a change. All of us are stakeholders. If we don't protect ourselves, we don't create mechanisms to protect ourselves, or try to increase our comprehensive national strength, we are just not going to be able to stand up and fight. It is not that we need to understand about ourselves. We also need to understand that we are working in silo systems, which is not conducive to a national economic growth. All of us have to work across the spectrum. There are no silos. We have to break it down. And whether the government takes a lead or not, I think it is the duty of the private sector, the think tanks, the academia, and the other collaborators to get onto this platform and think ahead. Having served in the government, I must say that government's own ecosystem of science, technology is very, very good, but the government depends on us to give it the kind of oxygen these systems require. So, ladies and gentlemen, national security is everybody's responsibility, and cybersecurity is one of the most important areas of national security, and we need to understand how we can leverage this to better performance, but also how to create safety standards for ourselves. And how will this happen? That we have to create awareness about the subject. We need to create awareness about what our neighbors are doing. What are the Chinese practices vis-a-vis trade commerce in India? Why have Chinese become part of the IT and ICT DNA in India or in other sectors? Like last year, I think the last 2 years, there is growing realization that the dangers that emanate from across our northern borders. China is not alone. There are Pakistan-oriented people. There are people elsewhere who could also be in the same area of concern for us. Last but not the least, I would like also to emphasize the fact that there is the need for our webinar today to create a roadmap for 3 things: that we become the purveyors of information, to create that ecosystem where people understand what the threats and challenges are. Secondly, we also need to appeal to management that they need to look at certain leverages that they can bring to the system by way of increasing the R&D or trying to bring in better technology, and not the least, to ensure and empower that the younger generation of entrepreneurs, the changepreneurs, are benefited by the constant going around of information. Once, first time when I met Suresh, I told him that I want a cyber security system which enables me to detect, deter, destroy, and document all inimical action aimed against me. Once I have this knowledge, I would like to build on this. I think I have taken more time than was allotted to me. With this, I will stop, and I'm sure that in the rest of the program, we will have much more to discuss. And I wish my colleagues very successful 2 hours, and we hope that we'll be able to generate more interest so that we have more people coming to join us on our masterclass program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ebliker. And I was just waiting to bring in some important points. You spoke about cybersecurity, and it is important for the audience to know how you connected to cybersecurity. Mr. Ebliker has retired as a Special Secretary, Government of India, and he's served the country for 38 illustrious years. He has actually worked in many areas of the security. In December 2011, he and 2 other like-minded individuals started a high-end next-generation security consultancy company in Bangalore to help bring new synergies to the world of private security and protection. So it's an extension of the physical security and the equipment used there to the cyber security. And as Mr. Hebliker mentioned, we have had multiple discussions. We have had many sessions where we have educated corporates in the health sector. We have spoken to manufacturing teams. We have spoken to the paramilitary forces, conducted sessions for them. He has been leading from the front. He is also a director on the board of Singapore-based Asian Dialogue Society. He's on the board of the Bangalore-based company Smart Transmission, which I co-founded. And he is quite aware of the technologies in cybersecurity, including blockchain, artificial intelligence, and Internet of Things, and machine learning. He is a certified information security practitioner from the Institute of Security and Safety Management, New Delhi. Thank you very much, sir, for that connection that you made to cybersecurity. I would like to request you to introduce Mr. Verma, and then we can kick off into the next session, sir.
Thank you very much for those kind words. I would like now to welcome my colleague and a fellow worker, Mr. Christian Verma, to the platform. Mr. Christian Verma served in the Government of India for 35 years. He was both an illustrious, distinguished service, and he retired at the head of one of India's most secretive and technical organization. And she is one of India's leading China watchers, speaks the language, and has had been posted in that country and elsewhere. He speaks in Chinese, and he's been a pointsman on anything that is associated with related China. Christian's presence today will give us an opportunity to look at how he looks at cybersecurity, because today he serves on board of several important corporate entities in India, besides being a member of the Rashtriya Raksha University in Ahmedabad, and worked on think tanks and other social organizations, which gives him, in my view, a 360-degree view of what national security is and what is the importance of cybersecurity in it. And apart from that, he has been writing articles on China, on security issues and developments in our neighboring countries. And importantly, he is also an advisor to an international NGO which deals with human trafficking. This is the same kind of work which I do for my company. And I think there is a lot of commonality in what we think and what we do. And I think without taking much of your time, Christian, may I invite you to come and join us and share your experience and expertise on the subject? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Ebliker, for those very kind and very generous remarks. I don't think I deserve that kind of praise. I think we just did what we did with a great sense of passion, for sure. And that has given us, put us in good stead over the years. Let me in the outset first thank the organizers. And I think the opening remarks by Mr. Kamath, who is the chairman of the FICCI Karnataka State Council, really set the contours of this, this webinar and the series of webinars. Mr. Heblicker's comments, of course, were extremely incisive, informative, and as usual, very precise and cogent to the subject in hand. It's really a pleasure to be here and to be able to share some of my views on cybersecurity, especially related to SMEs. I'm going to sort of focus only on that area for today's talk. It's going to be structured in a way that I would sort of talk about the little history of cybersecurity and how it relates to SMEs, kind of challenges that are posed, the kind of defenses that we need to put into place to be able to create an ecosystem which will be robust. And as Mr. Heblicker pointed out, that there are a large number of several thousand SMEs, MSMEs, which are involved, especially in the area of defense and security. And I happen to be associated with some of these organizations. I think there is no question. I think there needs no emphasis at all that we need to have a very high degree of security. You know, this really began almost a decade ago when companies' technology strategy was given much importance as was given to the business strategy. There was more of business than technology. However, that notion is becoming more and more obsolete as businesses begin to incorporate technology and security strategies into their overall business strategies. This is a very welcome phenomena as we go into 2021, which is a stated year for going completely digital in India. I think we can fairly expect a rise of cyber attacks, including credit card hacks, phishing, data theft, etc. These are new challenges. The startups and SME sectors especially are more vulnerable to these attacks, since they can be easily disguised even by normal business emails. Due to a lack of much strengthened security system in place, most of the small businesses are generally less secure and easy spots for hackers to target. Just to throw a few statistics at this, 47% of small businesses say that they have no understanding of how to protect themselves against cyber attacks. But as time goes on, cyber threats are becoming more numerous and complex, with orchestrated, multi-staged, evasive attacks becoming the norm. Criminals have targeted staff and clients with phishing emails, card fraud, and invoice redirection fraud. Many others faced attacks from ransom or gangs looking to take advantage of hastily put together remote solutions or securing personal devices used by staff. The recent data, I'm basing this in the middle of the year, at the online grocery startup, if you all remember, Big Basket, grabbed the headlines across the world and reiterated India's need to have a much more secure and viable cybersecurity system in place. It is also important to revisit the complexity of understanding data breaches and cyber attacks and introduce a more simplified setup that is easier for even a layman to understand. And I think this is where the core of this entire debate rests. As I mentioned earlier, SMEs are particularly vulnerable. Every company, whether it's small business or a tech giant, has weaknesses that programmers could exploit. While hackers can attack any business irrespective of its size, new companies and SMEs are more helpless against security attacks than their established counterparts. This is a well-known fact. You know, the cost of data breach is also something that we really need to bring into focus to understand the importance and the salience that is to be given to this very important aspect. I'm just quoting some facts I took out from a study. It says that according to the 2019 cost of data breach report by the IBM Security, the average cost of a data breach in the US stands at $3.92 million US. Vast majority of which, that is almost 67%, is realized within the first year of the breach. As for businesses in Asia Pacific, Microsoft reports that cyber crimes could cost businesses $1.75 trillion This could be a little exaggerated coming from a company which is actually dealing in cybersecurity, but nevertheless, these have resulted in job losses in 67% of the firms which have been hit. For most businesses across all industry sectors, the biggest cost results from the loss of customers after a data breach. We have seen this migration going on from various sites and some very prominent sites, including the airlines and banks and a lot of retail marketing. It is estimated that loss of business accounts for 36% of the total breach cost. So you can imagine the importance of plugging breaches and making sure that we have a robust and a preventive cybersecurity system. Other than the cost of data breach, I think we must also pay enough attention to the legal ramifications of such a breach. It's seen that the government has got a little more proactive in imposing penalties. There have been fines, and in extreme circumstances, even people have served in jail. These are some of the ramifications of not protecting personally identifiable information. Keeping in mind the limitations which are attached to a startup or a small business, the most effective way a startup or SME can ward off attack is by investing in a viable security solution, getting into the habit of standardized security protocols, and maintenance routines helps them to stay protected even further. While security can get extremely nuanced, I'm just sharing just a very preliminary kind of a prevention that you can take. One can always start off with broader and common security measures like adding a CAPTCHA test to their login pages, restricting access to their backends, setting user roles, filtering requests with a firewall, scanning websites and applications with a malware scanner, and so on. With the COVID-19 pandemic breaking out, I think this particular aspect of cybersecurity has got even more important for us and significant. You know, we have gone to a work from home kind of a ecosystem. There's been a lot of remote devices which have been introduced to the system. There is the iCloud, which is being used, and other IT services which have been going out to the SMEs, and people have been actually trying to work with them. I think a lot of businesses have switched to this and have actually invested in making sure that these lines and connectivity remains safe. Let me just, for the sake of brevity and on time, let me just share with you some of these challenges which I've codified. First of all, I think the SMEs are faced with a low awareness of cyber threats. There's inadequate protection for critical and sensitive information. There's a lack of budget to cover costs incurred for implementing cybersecurity measures. The availability of ICT's cybersecurity expertise and personnel. There are, of course, a lot of them coming into the market, but then we have some way to go to be able to make them, equip them with the kind of skill sets to keep ahead of the people who actually try to infiltrate these systems. The absence of suitable guidelines tailored to the SME sectors. And I think Mr. Bheblika did mention this a little while ago in his keynote address, which was, I think, very brilliant. Let me repeat that. Where he's talking about codifying this, sort of the SMEs actually would be reaching out to a set of experts to see how this could be evolved in general and specific terms for different SMEs, depending on which sector they are in and depending on the grade of security that they need to deal with. And this is a challenge as they move online. They have also, I think one has witnessed a low management support for the reasons of low budgets which are put in. I looked at something that is happening abroad. I went to the European Union, which has also put away quite a robust kind of a system. And according to their reports, the NSR, the 5 most common cyber incidents experienced by SMEs in that region were phishing attacks, web-based attacks, general malware, malicious insiders, and denial of service. In our country also, while SMEs face multiple challenges in dealing with cybersecurity, management awareness and commitment is a common underlying issue. This, in turn, drives decisions on the allocation of budgets and resources. This was highlighted. I'm just re-emphasizing this. Other challenges include low awareness of cyber threats, inadequate protection for critical and sensitive information, availability of cybersecurity expertise, we covered this earlier, and increased online presence. There are three things that I believe, three factors which can address the cybersecurity challenge in a more generic way. I think one is people. People play an essential role in the cybersecurity ecosystem. Attention must be given to the importance of responsibility, employee buy-in and awareness, cybersecurity training and cybersecurity policies, as well as third-party management in relation to confidential and or sensitive information. The second factor is processes. Monitoring internal business processes, including performing audits, incident planning and response, passwords, software patches, and data protection are some of the factors that are required under this process. The third area I wish to cover is technical. At the technical level, there are a number of aspects that need to be considered in relation to network security. Antivirus, encryption, security monitoring, physical security, and the security of backups. I think these are all very, very important facets. I've also put together what we can say is a cybersecurity guide specifically for SMEs, which could be practical steps to better secure the systems and businesses. I will read them out. Good cybersecurity culture. It covers management responsibility, employee buy-in, proper cybersecurity policies, regular cybersecurity audits, and appropriate data protection. The provision of appropriate training, effective third-party management, defined incident response plans, secured access to systems, secure devices, including managed and regular installation of software patches and upgrades, antivirus protection, email and web protection tools, data encryption, policies to manage mobile devices, secured networks, which would mean ensuring firewalls are in place, and regular review of remote access solutions. I think this is most important because we found in many ways very innocuous Trojans are placed in through emails, etc., which look like very ordinary, regular business kind of mails or even personal mails. Some of them are sort of spruced up and made attractive through various allurements that people very easily fall prey to. We've got to be especially careful of remote access solutions, constantly visit our sites to make sure that they're absolutely free of any kind of malware being introduced into their systems. This would involve better security from the physical aspect. And last but not least, we must have secure backups of all the data that resides and that we work with in our systems. I would like to stop here. I think I've tried to encapsulate all the challenges, the difficulties, the kind of prevention measures that we need to take, and what kind of guidance that we really need to impart to the SMEs to make this sector seamlessly work with the larger corporates and with sensitive industries where they are plugged in and their suppliers, to make sure that information is denied to anybody who tries to poke in and collect illegally data from us. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you once again for inviting me to this very, very important and timely seminar. I hope my comments have been useful to you, and if there are any questions, I would be happy to take them. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Verma. You actually connected very well to the topic, and you have actually spelled out many of the places where we fall short and many of the places where we have to do better. You have spoken about the post COVID-19 attacks are increasing because of the hybrid model of work from home and also leveraging technology, especially from homes which are not technically upgraded to handle large amounts of work being done from there. And the guide which you specified is really a beautiful way of expressing what SMEs should be looking at. We need to build a cyber culture, and cyber culture comes with awareness, which changes behavior, and which then becomes culture across the organization and across the industry, which is very well put by you. We have to have policies and processes, controls and standards. We need to have frequent audits which need to be done. We have to look at how do we secure our devices, both the physical devices, the mobile devices, and the applications. You also spoke about people and how you create awareness. There should be interesting models of creating awareness, and there are game technologies which are being used specifically in the area of cybersecurity for creating awareness. Most importantly, our businesses depend on our third parties, external stakeholders, and we need to look at how do we make them align to a cyber process that has been very well said by us. So in all, I think you covered everything, including BCP and DR, business continuity and disaster recovery from backups and so on. And actually, that brings me to one very important thing is when we talk about ransomware, unless you have backup which can make you start from some point, if not completely recovering your data, you're left in the loop in terms of not being able to continue your business. Very well said, sir. You have set the tone and pace once again after Mr. Kamath, Mr. Eblikar, and yourself. I think we are in for an interesting session. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me again.
Yeah. So I know we are running late in this session, but I will quickly try to cover. What I will do is I'll introduce the panels as quickly as possible, and the panel members are all here. And I thank all of them for taking this opportunity to interact with us. A quick introduction about myself. I have been in the IT industry for over 38 years now. My last 3 corporate roles have been with JP Morgan Chase, Hewlett Packard, Wipro, and I started my career with ABB as a campus trainee working on application, and I had the opportunity to work in application infrastructure engineering and a lot of business roles. So I think not many people would have had the opportunities of working in all the roles that I have done. And I have managed large IT operations across the globe, centering from India. I have only worked in India, setting up shops in India. More recently, I co-founded this company called Smart Transformation, and Mr. Eblikar is an advisor on the board of directors. We are involved in implementing IBM program for education, which is primarily in BTech and MBA. I do deliver sessions on cloud, IoT, and so on. So Alka and I, we have something common over there. And we also do a lot of VCSO services, since I'm also on the board with Jaideep on his company in terms of an advisor. And we do a VCSO service, and Jaideep has got a huge company which runs not only services in India and abroad. And my interest lies in areas of analytics, AI, ML, and IoT. So that's me. And the cybersecurity is something which I've been delivering in terms of awareness sessions and simulation exercises, tabletop exercise, and paper tests for various organizations. So that's about me. Today, we are going to be talking about cybersecurity in terms of the SME. We'll keep that in our mind so that we know that we are not going to deviate into something which is not relevant to this. And I am also encouraging our audience to post questions in the chat. I think already you can see some questions. And as time permits, we'll take these questions. And if you're not able to answer all the questions, we do take them back and come back to you through Fiki to get you answers. Okay. So starting today, our aim today is largely to create an urgency and prioritize and act on securing organizations from cyber threats. We can talk about cyber security and how it has to be done and what needs to be done and so on, but we need to act on that. So in that sense, what I would like to do is I would like to categorize the organizations into 3 areas. Some organizations which are deeply committed to security. There are organizations which are partially committed to security, and there are organizations that are yet to start on their security journey. So we will talk in relevance to these particular 3 areas. Since the pandemic 2019, COVID, which was not good for any one of us, more and more organizations have shown heavier dependence on technology. This is coupled with a deeper adoption of interconnected devices, and therefore what happens is obviously the directly proportional vulnerability increases many-fold. But we can also not do away with digitalization, because digitalization is a force multiplier for all of us today. Gone are the days when it would have been good to have this. Today's sessions, we are broadly divided into two areas, and I have all the speakers here. The first section would be talking about business resiliency. I'm talking about resiliency because resiliency is way there up above, and this talks to the management and the senior leadership team, who are basically the sponsors and who have to buy in the cybersecurity strategy and then allow the tactics to take over and the operation to happen. So business resiliency focusing on cybersecurity, and we also look at how can we help organizations achieve and sustain business resiliency. It is not only achieving it once and then forgetting it, but it's also sustaining it as more and more sophisticated threats, as the three previous speakers spoke about it. These threats are getting more sophisticated. We need to look at how do we empower our operations team to ensure that our organization is safe. With that said, I will start looking at each one of my members. And let me start with introducing Dr. Chinmay Hegde. If you can come on screen, Chinmay. He is the Managing Director and CEO for Aristocos Consulting Private Limited. Chinmay has over 20 years of experience in the field of information communication and operation technology field, where he worked for the global organization like Apple, McAfee, Symantec, Cisco, on building enterprise class products and which are used globally even today. Chinmay possesses intellectual properties in the area of security analytics, security compliance, enforcement, dynamic insider, the list goes on. And Chinmay has been conferred with the Honoris Causa by WPDO for his contribution towards ICT management and has presented various research papers at international conference. Welcome, Chinmay. We are very happy to have you here. I'll then go to Mr. Sainath Volam. Sainath, an InfoSec strategist, represent the alignment of technology, sales, and marketing, bachelor's degree, and tens of certificates, which is very, very important for cybersecurity professionals, network and security. Sainath translates tech issues into everyday language that is easily understandable by all business units. His expertise includes consulting, enterprise security, strategic partnerships, and mergers. And when you interact with Sainath, you will know that how he makes it easy without using buzzwords and technology. Welcome, Sainath. Good to have you here.
Thank you,
Then I
Suresh.
have Alka ji. Alka Agarwal brings over 20 years of experience in the Indian IT industry and 10 of these years in the academic and consultant. Currently, she is a cybersecurity consultant to some esteemed corporations in the industry. At PES University in Bangalore, she was instrumental in defining courses like computer network security, IoT security, and with major focus towards experiential learning. We have another lady also who actually talks about the talent management, but Alka is actually doing humongous efforts to actually create a curriculum that will create the next generation people for cybersecurity. Welcome, Alka. Good to have you on this. And Alka also held the VP and head of Novel Engineering India Center. And her industry experience is tremendous. She is a master from IIT Delhi, and she's also a certified ethical hacker. So she's still hands-on. Welcome, Alka, once again. We go to Shashank Dikshit. He's a cybersecurity expert with more than 14 years. It doesn't look so senior, but still age lies very nice on him. 14 years in the security industry. He comes with vast experience in securing businesses in diverse industries spread across the globe. He has delivered value to multiple government organizations and has executed cybersecurity engagements in more than 22 countries, which is wonderful. He is a speaker and participates in many cybersecurity panels. He is an avid mediator and yoga practitioner. Welcome, Shashank. Good to have you.
Thank you, Suresh.
We bring in Jaideep. Jaideep, as a co-founding member of InfoPercept, is involved in strategy and nurturing. Is hardcore technical. He has to be busy technically. You cannot have any discussion with him without having some technical buzzwords in that. I know Jaideep for many years now. And Jaideep is a tech-driven entrepreneur and has over 2 decades of experience in cybersecurity and executive experience in the area of business process automation, digital transformation, and security engagements and leadership. He has led his company of over 100 professionals very significantly. He's very good at establishing a cybersecurity vision for companies, conceptualizing products and services, both in the cybersecurity area, setting up and managing your TOC, your SOC, and NOC, and what other, I think, OCs I don't know about. And he's also building world's first non-real-time cybersecurity strategic project at this point in time. Welcome, Jaideep. We will hear a lot of things from you in this session. Then we go to Deepak. Deepak is the National Security Officer of Microsoft India, Deepak, you're on. We can't see you. Okay.
I hope I'm audible to you.
Yeah, you're audible, but we can't see you on the video. Yes, now we can see you. Deepak is a National Security Officer for Microsoft India. In his current job, he is responsible to drive security as a trusted advisor to the government, enterprises, industry partners to shape their cybersecurity strategies, support policies and future regulations which can increase cyber resiliency. In Microsoft, he spent 20 years, the career stint with multiple technical and business leadership roles in the Southeast Asia market of Symantec, Ernst & Young, McAfee, Trend Micro, Convergence, Cisco, Networking Academy. Deepak is also the chairman of ASOCAM, and we're going to ask him a few questions on that. And Deepak, welcome to this session. And there is one question which already Mr. Verma has put to you, saying that why is Microsoft worried about cybersecurity? You guys are delivering solutions. So I'll take you on that, man.
Thank you. Thank you. Sure. Happy to be there. Yeah.
Thank you. And last but not the least, while she's the youngest, Sanjana Rathi, the founding partner and chief executive officer of Cyber Diplomat, and she has achieved a lot in her short stint of career, I would say, which is wonderful. Sanjana is the CEO, founding partner of Cyber Diplomat, and which is based in India and US. She is a Tata Scholar holding master's degree in security and diplomacy from Tel Aviv University and MSc in Management of Information Systems and Digital Information from the London School of Economics and Political Sciences. In the past, she has worked with the International Criminal Police Organization, Israeli Defense Think Tank, private public sector enterprises such as Deloitte UK and PwC UK and academia. Having worked in all the domains of cyber, she's passionate and committed to the field. And I know that because Sandhana is right now setting up a cyber security center of excellence for one of the universities in Bangalore. Welcome, Sanjana. Good to have you here.
Thank you so much.
And I have Sai Pratyush. Sai, if you can come on screen. And I will not trouble Sai too much because he's not feeling too well. But Sai, it's wonderful to have you here, and you're going to be speaking at the end of the session once again. A career spanning over 2 decades and more. Currently, he heads the IoT, cloud, and SaaS services for Tata Telebusiness Services. A highly experienced senior leader whose achievements include developing SaaS and PaaS services for the US market, ideated and developed direct-to-consumer technical support services, QResolve, if I am right, responsible for ideating and launching nationwide services in telco, thereby expanding operations to over 1,500 cities in India. That's a huge achievement, Sai. And in his own words, he likes to traverse the road less traveled, and thankfully, he's got opportunity to do so. He asks questions on things like how to scale an IoT and cloud business, how to make deeper inroads into the SME market in India, particularly. How do we demystify digital for SMEs and so on? Welcome, Sai. Good to have you on the panel. Okay, so that is the panel, and you can understand collectively we bring about 200 years of experience and expertise delivering solutions for which we were paid and rewarded with other things too, in terms of promotions and stocks and things like that. So we are a powerful team in terms of providing solutions, and we would like to talk to you and discuss important aspects of what is cybersecurity and how we can draw some kind of alignment to what's happening around us and what we can do to make sure that things happen well. Okay, so the first question I will put to my good friend Alka. When we discuss, Alka, one of the points you emphasize is security is a way of thinking. You know, I like the way you said it, that security is a way of thinking. Can you elaborate on this?
Okay, thanks for all the kind words, Suresh. Really appreciate, and thank you for the esteemed speakers who have shared their thoughts in last 40-45 minutes. It's like, we talk about so many things and so many technologies, and it's very interesting, as doesn't matter is it an industry or is it an individual, because we play different roles when we seek security. I'm talking of security, not only cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is a subset of maybe information security. Security, it could be any bucket. That what is the problem which we are dealing with? Because the answer lies there. That what's the nature of this problem? And what do we mean, and here, I mean, I know I'm going to be cognizant of the time, so I'll just jump into as that when we say just one example, and maybe connect with thinking, all of us. Like, I'll just say black hat, white hat. That if I give the problem as saying, and I'll go on cybersecurity, let's go and steal this this file, go and get this file by hook or crook. Okay, so black hat. Okay, and how would we solve that problem? And the white hat problem, which is what we are talking about right now, is that secure this file, right? And how would we go about solving that problem? So this is what is the nature of the problem. And when we say black hat and say steal that file, okay, if you really ask me, it's a very, very simple closed-ended problem. I know that I have to steal that file. I can prove it to you, and I don't have to think much. I have to just look at in what ways can I just steal that file. It could be, the simplest mean. I don't have to look for a complex means. I will always look for the simplest means to get that file. I just need to know where is that file. Fair enough? And so that is a black hat. And once I get that file, I can prove it to you that I've got that file. So it's a closed-ended problem where we say, okay, fine, done. One means finished. But when we are talking about the problem which we are talking about right now, that is securing, right? White hat problem, and that protect that file. And that is when we start talking about, like the esteemed speakers have talked about multiple solutions, right? But as a securer, I have to think about in what all ways can my file be taken. So I'm taking a very simplistic problem, but data security, so in what all ways can my file be taken, right? And then that is when I start thinking, maybe, I can put a list and still I'm not sure that my list is complete. It's an open-ended problem. It's an open-ended problem where I can never prove that I have secured the file or not. Okay? So looking at the nature of the problem, then how exactly do we go about it? And that is where once we go deeper, and probably we can't go as deep because we can keep this is a pretty long topic. If you say how would we go deep, and we start realizing we've already gone as we say, okay, fine, we talk about people, process, technology. How did we arrive to that thought? Okay. Why are people coming in? Why are processes coming in? Technology is actually, it is in priority people, then process, then technology, right? So even as an organization, that is where the thought has to start putting in that what is it really? What does security mean to me? I really wish we could go by chat and get those answers, what does security really mean to me? Is it that, okay, fine, my server, normally people think in terms of technology. My application is 24/7, should be available to all the time. It impacts my business. My data should be secure. They are normally very generic statements, at a very high level statements, right? And then automatically we think as, okay, fine, what is the impact if what we are talking about that, what the security to me means to me, if that is breached, what is the impact of that breach? Fair? And is the impact completely, impacting my business or not? Fair? If it impacts my business, then at what level do I need to think about, providing the solution? Why am I even jumping from, the security is a way of thinking to this? Because as soon as I realize that, and I'm just making the connect and would go back to Suresh, is that as soon as I realize that whatever, first is a thought process that what does security mean to me and what do I want to protect? Then you start thinking that, okay, fine, how do I go about protecting it? Okay? And that is a white hat problem. As that, okay, when we start thinking, that is the open-ended problem which I was talking about. How do I go about protecting it? If I don't think and I just put it to an IT guy, have you put an anti-malware and have you put a firewall and have you put an IDS? Fair? And there are such obvious ways of getting what you're securing, right? Yeah, and maybe not so obvious ways also, but have all those gates been covered? Is like as open-ended. Fair? So it is an open-ended problem. It requires that thinking. And it changes once we go deeper in this thought process, we realize it changes the whole fabric of way of working. That is why we talk about awareness, we talk about processes, we talk about, people awareness. Way of working entirely starts changing once we go deeper and deeper in that thinking. Yeah. So I know, Suresh, I'll go brief. I understand the brevity of time. So,
Thank you.
just giving that feel as why it is actually, we realize once we start going through that process,
Absolutely.
it is actually a way of thinking which pervades the organization, where we try to bring it to people, process, technology, but then also being an open-ended problem, right? The solution with probability, high probability, is possible only if it becomes a way of thinking and a culture or fabric of the organization.
Perfect. And I also remember the other statement which you make, which I'm going to steal from you, is I can be as secure as I want to be. It is interesting to say that, when we talk about threats, security threats start at home. You have a main door, you have a tri-bolt lock, you have a latch on top, you have a safety chain and things like that. Why? You're trying to protect the people and you're trying to protect the assets over there. It's as simple as that. Now somebody tries to come through the back door, if you have a back door, and then you start making sure that that is protected. And there could be other ways like windows and things like that. So you have to continuously keep protecting what you are protecting in terms of assets and people. So very well said, Alka. Thank you. And I'm going to jump to Deepak. And Deepak, taking this point of security is a way of life, and security, you can be as secure as you want. I wanted to ask you, like, how would you talk about building blocks for cyber security in organizations? Take security and apply it to cyber security. What would be the building blocks for cyber security?
Thank you, Suresh. I hope I'm audible first. That's important to know for everyone. Okay, great. Alka, thank you. This is first time I'm hearing that we can go more than talking about emotional security, health security, physical security. When we learn in English grammar, I suddenly realized, am I really a cyber security guy, or should we start thinking of security as in general? Because my son says I'm insecure whether I'll get a good marks or not. Insecurity, right? The health ministry feels I'm insecure if I see citizens are not secure because of not getting vaccine, right? For me, just to start this, Suresh, to set the context and the building block is the identification or the risk analysis or understanding the impact of risk, and to minimize the security for me in general. And Alka rightly mentioned, cybersecurity is a very different perspective of a larger information security. And when we are talking about building blocks, the most important thing which starts with is it's something in the COVID time. What I learned and I keep talking about is calling it as hygiene. 30 seconds of washing hands. I keep repeating this so that I also become conscious in that. Was the minimum guidelines which I learned to be secure. Forget about cyber security, data theft, national asset. The basic hygiene, that if you're not having the basic practice of mask and basic practice of 30 seconds of washing hands. Now let me give you a narrative that why these things we do. We do it because we are insecure. We do it because we have insecurity in losing the data or identity, most importantly in today's world, which is called digital identity. Physical identity is still easy to maintain. So the building block, if I have to put today as a foundation for something in security, I would say, have we done the basic homework? Like we say, the charity begins at home, work starts from home, security also starts from you. We have a national security officer, the chief of India, National Cyber Security Coordinator, respected General Rajesh Pant, and I keep attending and being part of it, and I keep quoting, and I'll quote here as well, that security is everyone's responsibility. That's another block. So if I'm a consumer, I'm an employee of Microsoft, I own a Surface device, maybe somebody Android, Office, whatever, right? From the end point where I'm starting and how I'm accessing, am I securing the devices while work from home? Larger thought, but a basic practice, right? Is anybody else can access my Wi-Fi? Very basic practices, not talking about nation state threat, but can it create a nation state threat? Answer is yes. Answer is yes. So the basic second building block is the practices of human being, which Alka mentioned about people, process, and technology. I have learned in many forums, which is a good word to say people, process, technology, and psychology. Most of the attacks, including PM funds, which happened, or the largest attack which happened, is on psychology. It happens because you impact somewhere sending a luring email that you click on that link so that you get the concentrator. And a very near dear one family member is worried because of not getting oxygen concentrator. He's bound to click, trust me, including myself. Because for me, the insecurity to lose a family member is far higher than thinking of business email compromise or phishing on that moment. And that's where the third and the most crux or the pillar of the house is skilling. Rather, I would emphasize on this call, quality skilling. Skilling is easy. People know what is security, but they don't know what are the implications, not just losing data, but what basic things I should do. What should I do if suddenly I met with an accident on the road? What is my first step? People understand till today because the insurance, they know how to do it. What is the first step they need to do? If somebody gets an attack, what does it need to do? No, need not to be a doctor, right? You need to learn some basic practices, which is called survival on that moment. Think of cybersecurity as the fourth building block. That are we having that minimum security baseline guidelines through skilling, through quality tech? By the way, without disturbing innovation. I'm pretty vocalist in saying that we should not be killing or demonizing the innovation just by not adopting AI. No, it will not help. Or cloud, or for that matter, ML, and thinking about what bad they can do. We have not even explored what good they can do. And by the way, the same technologies, cyber criminals, hacktivists, hackers, nation state threat actors, all are utilizing in Capline. That means there is a far more larger need for all of us to advance that technology, utilize it more, make it more secure, right? So hardening of systems, hardening of platforms is another building block, Suresh. With limited span of time in the rotation, if it comes back, again, I would conclude security should not be looked only from security. It should be looked today's world into integrated approach as a whole. What does that mean to me is security. I carry identity, which is very, very pertinent. Most of the attacks happen, right? Compliance. And looking into this whole as how can I see this like I'm seeing all of you on a single window? I can easily at least navigate. Compliance do not talk to identity. Identity do not talk to security. Any enterprise, forget about MSME, takes 40 to 70 odd products just to share with you all to secure themselves. Are they going to talk to each other? Mr. Verma spoke about it on the product and technologies, how we can evolve that. Concluding on Verma sir's point, which is very, very pertinent representing Microsoft, is we are provider of security and we have to defend ourselves as well, right? So being a defender, you need to think how much secure I am in the cloud. That is what am I providing to you all as a security provider? How secure I am. And that's where we do investments and growing and building those stuff, right? And the second part, which is called shared responsibilities, how much we are providing security to the others as a product and technology, as an integrated approach. And that's where we are defender as well as also safeguarding to look into that what data analysis is, how much threat intelligence are, why 6 trillion is the infrastructure in the cost, why more than what around 80 petabytes of data being developed, 300 billion plus identities being accessed, right? These numbers are not just to give a threat signal, but actually to minimize the threat noise. So with those building blocks and creating a good culture, I would say to conclude, a culture of human being, a humanity to use responsible AI, right? Ethical way of doing, black hat, red hat, blue hat, purple, the way we call, the screens of purple team, blue team, green teams, all, and then black hats and the white hats. If we utilize it, I think the building blocks are done. We don't need to be very, very advanced and tech savvy, at least in terms of India. Before I leave the dais for this call, we have reached 10th number from 32nd. Thanks to Government of India. It's an achievement for all of us. And I'm sure
Yes.
each one of us are contributing to build something called cyber vaccine, cyber hygiene, which we can build it up. Thank you, Suresh sir.
Thanks.
Suresh, before you take over, just one interesting thanks, Deepak, for reminding on the psychology front, because, when you look at all the courses internationally which are being provided for cybersecurity specialization now, almost every prominent university has a psychological vertical associated with the technical courses which they provide, and it is a mandatory part of to take that. So thanks for reminding that, because everyone has recognized that psychology, black hat is easiest to play with psychology. White hat, we go with so much of technology and all that.
Yeah.
But for them, it's such an easy game to understand human minds. So thank you for reminding that.
Thank you.
So thanks, Deepak. You actually, I would like to touch upon 2 points which you mentioned. In fact, Mr. Eblikar and I, we met General Rajesh Pant many times in his office along with Colonel Work, and he also participated in the China program which we did. One of the simulation exercise, he actually was very happy. In fact, today he sent a message to Mr. Eblikar saying that this is good, you people are starting this. I'm looking for more coming from this joint participation, and we are looking at how we can create awareness and so on. And the second part which you're talking about is like, the building blocks which you very nicely stated, which is important for all the organization to understand, and also what Alka mentioned. Security is not isolated. It's not something which is technical. It is process, it is policies, it is controls, it is standards, it is people, it is training. There's so many different things. When you build these things together, you form a security posture or a security strategy, which will be very difficult for somebody to get into. But you have to be also understanding that the attacks are getting more sophisticated, so you have to continuously work on that. So good point you brought in. I would like to now jump to Sai. Sai, what would you actually talk about when you talk about MSMEs in the event that a cyber crisis occurs? What do you think they should be doing so that they are resilient?
Sure. So first thing, what an MSME would need to start with is the incident response playbook, if they have any. Like majority of the organizations would ideally have an incident response playbook defined or designed already. In case they don't have any, so they could reach out to CERTIN, which is Computer Emergency Response Team India. They would support all MSMEs and enterprises, even in terms of identifying where the root cause is all about, and supporting these organizations to further remediate the issues or contaminate the malware or any breach, like just controlling the breach and minimizing the breach. So that would be the better place for them to start with, and following further, like they could start with simple cybersecurity practices, just like as others mentioned, training their employees on cybersecurity. Training in the sense, it's just like raising awareness in terms of psychology, and preparing incident response playbooks, and having a kind of biannual or annual war games, so that just like how you started with India-China war game, so they could start with an internal black hat and white hat war game, things like that, and having a proper availability management setup within the organization, so where they could have an on-call person or backup servers. So pretty much basic procedures or to be followed. And connecting annual access. So pretty much these things would help any MSME to overcome any of the challenges ideally. Yep, I would say that's the thing. That's the key thing which majority of the MSMEs would miss.
Okay. So, Sai, I would like to continue with you. In fact, I like the way you said controlling the spread and practices, creating a playbook, raising awareness, doing war games, and so on. A question: since you work both with the private sector as well as in the public sector, what are the opportunities for cyber professionals in the government and private sector today? Now, why I'm asking this question is, on one hand, we are saying the number of attacks are increasing and ransomware threats are increasing. In fact, some number which I got from my last conference in Isaka was there's a 238% increase in attacks on banks and regulatories and things like that. There's 600% increase on phishing. There's about 150 plus percentage increase on ransomware. So if you look at it, when you actually look at the public sector and the private sector, where do the attacks land more often, and what does the government do, and what does the private sector have to do?
Sure. So I would start with the opportunities what governments are providing and private organizations are providing in general. So starting with Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, which is investing a lot in terms of cybersecurity, and we do have a CDAC and multiple chapters of CDAC available across India, who are aggressively hiring people on lateral entries, and they are hiring on contract basis. They do have public-private partnerships with multiple entities. And as well, Ministry of Home Affairs under CIS branch, they do have multiple schemes like I4C, They do have Indian cybersecurity schemes and ISAC. So multiple schemes are already in place. Apart from the central government engagements, we do have every state have their own cyber domes. So specifically Karnataka, Telangana, Kerala, and Maharashtra, in partnerships with NASCOM and EY, PwC, they are investing a lot on cyber research. So all these tools were even shared with other states, and we could see the changes in our governance and the response of these organizations. So I could pretty much say, like, post 2015, I mean, yeah, before 2015, whatever you have seen is completely different, and after 2015, the response of these officers was completely different. So they do have the technology now, they know the process, and they did happen to engage with third parties, and yeah, things are getting materialized. And in terms of private organizations, skill shortage is pretty huge. So yeah, as per a couple of studies, it's 1.5 million people were required just in India. And yeah, even in Microsoft, we know, like, hell lot of openings for cybersecurity professionals. And the key thing, what we lack in these cybersecurity professionals is not the hard skill, it's not the technology, it's the soft skills. So as these guys are pretty much into like a self-learning mode, as there are no orchestrated learnings and not many orchestrated learnings for cybersecurity, so they would end up trying to break the system all the time. So which would which would end up landing companies in trouble. So yeah, in terms of skill shortage, there is no limitation as such. And in terms of attacks, private organizations are being attacked a lot, whatever I have seen. So government organizations, they do have a standard set of things. And apart from that, like, they have certain legacy setups as well at certain locations. So ideally, they are immune to attacks, to the advanced attacks, taking it on the other positive note. But private organizations, they end up having cyber insurances, and these cyber criminal groups, they would first steal the data from cyber insurance companies, and then they attack the companies which have cyber insurance. This is what's happening in the underground market now. So that they have enough money to pay the cyber criminals on ransoms.
Okay. Hey, thanks, Sai. I would like to go back to Deepak. Deepak, in your role as the chairman for ASSOCHAM, and what are some of the activities that are being carried out? I'm relating the question to the bodies such as NASCOM and now FICCI and MITI doing something in the area of cyber security space. What are some of the things, activities carried out from there? Maybe if you're concentrating on the Northeast region, how the other regions in India can benefit from that?
Sure. Let me take the overall view. SOCHM is one part of it, so surely, but being on this audience, and they might get beneficial to know some names. Thanks to Sai for bringing Ministry of IT, which is the core arm and helping a lot, along with, if I may use NEGD, and other departments as well. So let me take two part of it. With obviously on the industry body, including all of you, and for SOCHM, it's more the pillar of skilling goes on highest. 2.5 million to be bridged in cybersecurity. And then the second part is, as I use the word quality skilling, it is more to do with not skilling, it is also to do with IoT with cybersecurity. Just to give you that perspective. How can we build something as an IoT guidelines or security guidelines, which Government of India is working on, or cybersecurity national strategy is about to come, or data protection bill? How are you evolutionizing those things at a minuscule level? It is not about just giving what Alka rightly mentioned. I like that. It's not about top level view, broad level view that there are threats. Every world, every individual, every kid should know. That's not going to solve the problem. The second part is related to that. How do we build? So skilling, and then double picking on that skilling is the power of AI in cybersecurity. There is a debate on, for example, not related to any of the current topic, but in general, like facial recognition with AI. Can it be utilized in cyber policing? Yes. But does it require a lot of responsible, ethical way of using? Absolutely, yes. So these are the type of larger thought process which can help even evolutionize regulatory needs. Is part, some part, we have, in general, Microsoft is representing, from SOCHAM we are doing it, and from all the industry one. The second part out of skilling is about technologies and processes. There is plethora of things lying here and there. And like Sai mentioned, there is a consortium which is working with the consultants, we product companies, industry bodies. There is a huge amount of work to be done, which we are also trying to help on is white papers and documentation. That should not be theoretical Bible. Nobody able to read it. It's about how do we put a narrative of 2 to 3 pages where it is easy to understand. The third piece is about education on the skilling, rather I'm using the word education of K-12 and onwards. Cybersecurity to be embedded or infused in my kids, I'll be more than happy if I can say so. And in the way where it goes as a learning gap. That means the way I learn German as English as foreign language, I wish I can say it's not a process as of today. This is one point I'm making, that in education where we are doing standard, this can be part of it. Coming back to Government of India, happy to share that at the national level, the cross-border threat intel, Microsoft and many more organizations, we are happy that we try to engage and identify where we can stop threat actors early by giving proactive signals, because we are gauging the data worldwide, securing ourselves. Verma sir talked about it. This is a great point to relate. When you have learned from your millions and billions of end devices lying on endpoint with operating system, and unfortunately even today with Microsoft, there are a lot of people on the Windows 7 or legacy. And most of the threats creates from there. How do we learn those signals, help them improve? Can it be also done in association with industry body? All these are thoughts coming from the industry body. And last piece, with Government of India, there is a program which Ministry of IT with NEGD and others signed. I hope you are aware about it. Cyber Suraksha Bharat, right? Like Suraksha Kavach. And Cyber Suraksha Bharat, we are privileged that we are part of that consortium, helping to embrace new technologies, and it is purely about tech trainings to CISOs of government or the secretaries or the tech stakeholders which can build. So Cyber Suraksha Bharat, threat intelligence program at national level, helping cyber fraud with digital crime units, stopping those threat intel, and with SOCM about joint white papers, regulatory aspects, going deep dive, are helping the community. I hope we are contributing some part of it. So,
Wonderful, wonderful, Deepak. That was an eye opener for us in terms of what is happening over there. Now, let me jump to Dr. Chinmay Hegde, my good friend. You know what? You were working on two areas. One is cybersecurity, other is your smart city, and you're doing a lot of work in terms of moving things around there. I wanted to ask you, looking at MSMEs today, how can they leverage this opportunity of Make in India, which is very essential for something in the smart city areas?
Yes. So I have been keenly hearing all the keynote speakers and the respective questions answered by Deepak, my good friend for many years, and Sai and Alka and everybody, right? So, Suresh, it's an intriguing question, definitely, and MSMEs very importantly is the thing is, in case of smart cities and smart infrastructures, when I say smart infrastructure, it is all the industrial networks or public networks. Now India is evolving with multiple different opportunities. Yes, 100 smart city missions came in, and then now Sagarmala, Bharatmala, inland waterways, right? So railways network, right? So these are all various different smart public infrastructure which are coming in. Similarly, industrial revolutions by means of the industrial corridors like Delhi Mumbai industrial corridor, or connecting a respective golden quadrilateral, right? So this is opening up a lot of opportunities for MSMEs, and also by guidelines, right? So such as each smart city RFP has got, of course, yeah, it has to be religiously put in practice, because MSMEs definitely are the startups, right? So both of them have definitely an innovative angle to the implementation of technology. And there are opportunities like the master system integrators are typically asked in every tender to hire services from MSMEs or startups to the tune of about 30% of the total scope, right? So, and also there are certain RFPs which have come in last 3 to 4 years, that if you use the Make in India products, you will get additional marks, including the thing is some of the Indian made security devices or security solutions, right? So where it comes to, maybe it starts from firewalls or UTMs and all typical standard age-old, the traditional security solution, till the latest ones of the security frameworks overall, right? So though security is part and parcel of it, but one thing that MSMEs typically miss out is in the rush of catching the daily business, right? So the security aspect is quite ignored. That is, let us accept to that fact, right? So that needs to be corrected. That is where it creates a kind of a fear in the buyer, right? So mainly the smart city administrators or anybody typically would go for the Gartner certified or something of that sort they mention, but there are guidelines now under smart city mission stating that that is actually limiting a lot of scopes for the make in India kind of an opportunity, the guidelines, right? So MSMEs have to pay attention in terms of how can they secure their product lines. Maybe it is a horizontal security or a vertical security product lines overall, right? So if you are an IoT device manufacturer, or if you are any such kind of a product or industrial product manufacturer, you need to adapt the practice of how can you start the security from the design level, right? So, and then to the level of implementation. That's how traditionally this thing goes, and opportunities are enough, abundant, no doubts about it, because each smart city, I'm just taking, we have created or bought the security devices and implemented the security solutions for as many as 3 smart cities in India at this moment. So opportunities are abundant, no doubts about it.
Okay, so that's very nice, Chinmay. You put it so nicely. Opportunity is 30% of procurement. There's a guideline which is there. You also specified what pitfalls are there. If you are going to be looking for business and if you're looking at growth, and if you don't have the security posture or strategy, then my good friends from the MSME may not be even able to qualify for being looked into. So it's very good, and there's a lot to take from there. I know Deepak has to leave, so I will ask him a couple of questions before he leaves. It's very difficult to catch him. So, Deepak, one of the questions which is there in my mind, which also was spoken to by the previous people, including Mr. Evlikar, Mr. Verma, Mr. Kamat, all spoke about it, is post-COVID. We keep talking about post-COVID, post-COVID. Now, I think the mask and the gloves and the sanitizer are here to stay. And we keep talking about when they will go away. But post-COVID, when you talk about, if I align this discussion to MSMEs, what should they think about with respect to cybersecurity? We have spoken about the building block, we have spoken about security as a way, but 2 or 3 tips for them as to post COVID, where should they look at, beefing up their security or putting more money on the table for acting on security?
Sure, sure. And apologies if I'm waiting more time for others, not that important at all, but I'll just take 2 minutes so that I even have 10 minutes to hear from others. But this is important for me to talk about MSME. Largely, we talk about enterprise, government, where the funds are there, establishments are there. Let me talk precisely on MSME. And when I'm saying MSME, I'm hoping I'm talking about all sectors, government, private MSMEs, any regional MSMEs, as well as the word startup. I'm combining them today together for a single purpose. If I today open a startup, I will think about like a trainer that let me open a training institute. My objective should be to build my training content, deliver well, scale to larger people and expand, right? As an individual, if I open a startup or if I'm an MSME. If I'm delivering something to defense, it earlier came in, right, as a smart city or to a road or anywhere. My job would be how do I manage the transport, process, supply chain management. What I'm trying to do is every MSME, like any other enterprise, has a priority job to do. My first humble request is, let's not become the security expert, because let the security experts do it for you. At the low cost, that's also I'm adding. What does that mean is, all the organizations like all of us have been coming up with SMB, mid-scale, small scale, even the word which I mentioned like for UT, and this all thing came up initially to scale MSME, not enterprises if you ask me. That means you need to look into holistic approach. You should not be having point silo product which you can't manage. One, you have less resources. Second, what I'm trying to highlight is don't be skilled on something which others have the expertise. Utilize that expertise so that you can scale in your smart city project or a defense project or a tech project or maybe ed tech or whatever, whatnot. That's first part. The second part is I don't see any MSP will be able to tackle the risk and the concerns, one part, and the second, they would not be able to absorb the cost of compliance. So to secure the company to build their revenue, they would be focusing on their selling rather than making $10,000 to $100,000 to make themselves compliance. And because of which they will not give importance to compliance or hide away from that, and both will be risky. So today I'm also highlighting that other than security, please invest in compliance also through the compliance-based small platforms. That means a larger company or smaller does not mean I would represent Microsoft, would not say Microsoft means costly. That's not correct. Cloud means very heavy. That's not correct. We have a lot to learn in between as well. But the reality is even these, and I would love to rather position today, make in India, the Indian products, because even with the platform like us, the product get evolved on that. So you might be making India, you might be utilizing Azure as a platform of Microsoft or Amazon or Google or any platform where you can scale fast. Every cloud provider came to scale you fast so that you don't invest separately in security, separately in your product. So try to combine your people, technology, processes. And then the last part, the skill we have covered, technology we have covered, process regulations we have covered, compliance we have covered, right? What is missing? We also need to think about scaling it in long term for ROI. Because we think like our product or scaling or for incident response, I mentioned about it. Even at the smallest one room, chair or books with me and I am the startup from day one, not because I'm a security practitioner, I would think I'm assumed breached. It's called zero trust model. I'm bringing that point before leaving because that's a tech part I have to leave. Zero trust is an architecture, can be adopted by a smallest player, can be with the largest player. Journey can be different. That way, you know that what frame of work I should look when I have to look for my identity security endpoint. You should not be thinking that starting startup, I should buy what device. Think of the logic and one of the process and streamlining journey. I'm using the word zero trust because that's the need of the hour. Get onto that journey, build that journey. I think at least you'll be what I started with. You'll be secure, you'll be compliant. Your digital identity is also secure and you have a holistic approach. Thank you, sir.
Very good. Now, let me just jump to Jaideep now, connecting where Deepak you left off. Jaideep, basically, since you are running cybersecurity solutions not only for companies in India, in the MSME sector as well as the enterprise sector, but you're also doing it in Middle East, you're doing it in Africa, you're doing it in Far East, and also I think you're doing it currently in US in some areas and things like that. So when you look at somebody who wants services, as Deepak said, you don't look at something which you are not capable in terms of looking at. As a specialist, you need to bring in cyber security experts who can do this for you. Very simple. In English, we say that if you do it right, you save money. If you do it wrong, you will keep on burning money to ensure that it becomes right. So do it right the first time is what we are trying to say. So what is if you are the service provider and even Dr. Chinmay's organization is a service provider either to the private sector or to the public sector or even to MSMEs. What should the companies look for when they are tying up with companies such as yours or Deepak's or somebody else's to make sure that they have the right stakeholders who will think about them first and not the revenue they make?
Yeah. So maybe I can share my experience, the way we have seen the MSMEs and the other industries growing in terms of the overall landscape, the way everybody has been talking. So the way we had seen industries earlier, they were using few of the on-premises and the applications that were serving the problem in terms of the overall business. But the way it has started scaling, not only post-COVID, but even before COVID, uh, the way they started using automation in their industries, the different application to solve the different financial requirements, marketing, sales, use of social media, the different clouds, the third-party applications. So entire landscape is becoming very dynamic. And that's where when it comes to security, as rightly mentioned by all of the speakers, it requires around 30, 40 solutions to be integrated and brought together to run a right next generation SOC, so-called next generation SOC. And that's where we as we have an experience of building that next generation SOC for a lot of our clients, enterprise as well as MSME, all over the world. And the way we have been helping is we have been leveraging open source a lot. So little against the Microsoft strategy, but yes, we have been leveraging a lot of open source cybersecurity innovation, stitching it and building the right solution out of it. And that has helped a lot of mid-sized startup to build a next generation SOC using this open source solutions that are available. And it has created a reasonable value for the boardroom also, because what advantage they have is there is no cost for the license, and they also can avail the different teams to look at the entire SOC operations for them. So that's how we have been solving this problem. And also community that which we have been using and leveraging, we have also been contributing in terms of development, in terms of integration use cases. So much that we have been doing also.
Perfect. So that's a wonderful answer, Jaideep. I think you said it very, very simply and very nicely. When you bring in a company which has got the width and the depth and the breadth in terms of not only looking at skills, but also looking at research, providing use cases, licensing problems are not there. So it becomes more like a scale for economy. It not only looks at best practices, but also brings it scale for economy. Deepak, would you like to add on that?
Have I missed the last part? Which is it?
I said, would you like to add your comment on use of technical support from vendors who are very clearly cybersecurity experts? What Jaideep said, I just wanted to know whether you wanted to add anything to that.
No, this is true. Both the points what Jaideep mentioned, even I would highlight on the SOC part. I mean, we say, Jaideep, minimizing the noise. That means it's like in data, we say, everybody talks about petabyte data. Nobody talks about out of that 80% is garbage. If I'm not able to use it, it's garbage, right? Correct. Similarly, creating the signals and noise and security operations center. That means 24/7 end users, experts sitting and just seeing where the attack and all those stuff, how AI and automation can build up. Suresh was a great point which Jaideep mentioned about it. And the second part related to that aspect is definitely yes. I mean, there is no better way to emphasize on that point that how do we navigate in MSMEs to have the tech supports to the expert providers. And that's why it should be related that the more we skill people, quality skill, the more they should join partners like Make in India and the partners who are creating, and the more they can support customers, right? So it is all about customer support by the experts in technical expertise can help. Let me conclude this point on a very interesting activity. Any attack which is once it is detected, and then we get to know it is lying in the systems or in the network in the company for more than 200, 250 days. Multiple reports, multiple number, but on an average 200 plus days, we get to know. And then the nerves get started thinking when eyebrows raise and say, hey, what is the RCA? What should we do? What all damage has happened? Same like the natural impact of physical calamity, right? It is all about response time. And I'm assuming that if I'm not well, right, and I have a chest pain, I assume that a chest specialist will help me better. Very precise answer. A cyber specialist and a practitioner and a support from that will do a little better job on that moment, because in cybersecurity, time is the essence. So any attack require only once in a lifetime to hit me. But Microsoft has to defend 100 out of 100 times. If I miss once, attack will happen. Thank you, Jyoti, for bringing that point.
Perfect. Let me jump to Shashank now. Shashank, 2 points come to my mind based on what we have discussed so far. Now, you and I, when we spoke about different state governments, and there's some push coming from central governments and things like that. They are at different stages of providing a framework or guidance or some kind of a support to these people. So, Shashank, when I discussed with you, you spoke about Karnataka, Kerala, Andhra, Telangana, and so on. Can you just explain to the MSMEs in this region and in other regions, because we have got participation from all India today. The MSMEs are from all over the country and they are in different segments. What are the various initiatives taken at state level?
Sure. So thank you, Sureji. So for all MSMEs, I would request that please go through the CERT-in. This is official Government of India website, and there are certain vendors which are already being impaneled by CERT-in. Almost 100 plus vendors are there. And in case you feel that you have a need, you want some helping hand, it's good to go to the expert, as the panel was saying earlier. So it's good to go. So that's at the central level where certain when everybody has been impaneled. Then you also have support available from your state. So whichever state you are in. Now there are different cybersecurity guidelines, different kind of frameworks which are coming up, and even in Karnataka, as we were discussing about this webinar, I also did some research that what is the current thing going on, and there's a lot of initiatives by government, state governments to make sure that all the MSMEs they follow certain framework. So that's the lot of support. There's a lot of change which is happening in India, and the new cybersecurity policy is already in good state. So I think with the coming time also there will be a lot more support available. Now, in case if you feel that is not what you're you're able to get, or so just look at something. What is most critical for you? This is the one question you need to answer. Yeah, what is it that you're trying to protect? What is the exposure you available, and whatever been the technology with you, what is being exposed to internet? And once this answer is clear that what is very critical for you, you can start developing the defense around it. And to develop the defense around it, there are multiple standards which are internationally being followed. I'll just name a few. You can go to NIST, you can go to CIS. CIS I would recommend because it's a very simple framework. You can go, and there are some only 18 different controls which you can look into. It starts with basically protecting your endpoint. It starts with protecting your how you managing your inventory, to the awareness how your employees are being aware about the cybersecurity. So there is a support from your central government. There's a support from the state government. There has been immense amount of talent which has been pulled in every year. There are hackathons. There are different kind of events. There are bodies. We have in Karnataka, we have Center of Excellence for Cybersecurity, and there is ample amount of knowledge source which is available. At the same time, make sure you sit together with your team and decide what is more critical for you, and then start your own, because your business priorities are different. You understand your business better, so you know what is going to impact your business. So it's important that answer, that defense mechanism has to come out of you. Of course, there are support available, but it's all about MSMEs knowing what is critical for them.
Yeah, very well spelled out. Shashank, there is support both from the state government as well as from the central government, and not many people are aware of this for some reason. We being in cybersecurity fraternity, probably in this the area of business, we know that so much of inputs are coming from here, but from people who are in the MSME sector, or who are not so tech aligned, if I might say, they would leave it to their IT departments or something like that, which would then be very useful for them to connect to these bodies to find out more of what can be done. I would like to go to Sai Pratyush. I know Sai, I'll just take one or two questions with you, Sai Pratyush. When we look at the BFSI segment, I come from the BFSI segment, and it is highly regulated. Compliance is there, you can lose your license, and even a change which is impacting, cross-impacting, all those things will have to take care. If the BFSI sector is highly regulated, that is one. But for the other sectors, either it is insignificant, or there are not really too many regulations, and additionally, as Deepak also mentioned, the cybersecurity, national cybersecurity policy is still work in progress. How does it play out for MSMEs who are in non-BFSI segment, or even in the BFSI segment?
Right. I think, just to kind of reiterate what the other panelists said, today, as far as MSMEs are concerned, the leadership in these organizations don't necessarily take security seriously, right? They don't necessarily understand the implications of not having a security policy in place. And I'll just give an example. As we are a telco. We provide internet connectivity and voice telephony to SMEs across the country, MSMEs across the country. And sometime back, we introduced a product proposition, which was a bundle between internet connectivity and security. And we thought that it would be an easy job to convince the leadership in these organizations and entrepreneurs, to kind of make these investments, but it was a hard sell. And that tells me that ultimately I think we need to start at the top. We need to make sure that organizations which are not regulated also understand that if they don't have good security policies in place or security infrastructure in place, it could impact their business in the short term and the long term. And I think these kind of workshops are important to kind of emphasize the need for good security practices within the organization.
Okay, that's a very well said statement. So whether you're regulated or not regulated, if it is regulated, then therefore you have some benefits coming from that, which may still not protect you from having an impact. If it is not regulated, definitely you have to be that much more careful to ensure that you are protecting your business without leaving it for a chance. Now, let me bring one point which you brought. I want to connect it with Sanjana. You spoke about leadership and we spoke about culture in a big way and so on. And Sanjana, we have discussed when we spoke even before, what are the different cultural values that we need to put together when you're talking about, not necessarily a strategy like cybersecurity, but generally. And, what I'm talking about is drawing upon your experience working with different cultures. Where do you see, culture playing a big role and therefore leadership being impacted by that, and therefore there's a positive impact on the business related to adopting cybersecurity?
Yes, culture plays a huge role in cybersecurity. In fact, it adds to another layer of defense, I would say, of the entire organization. For example, one of the biggest advantage that countries like China and even for that matter, Israel has, that they really take their language very seriously, and they are having Hebrew and in fact in Israel it's very difficult to communicate without knowing Hebrew in especially defense and other organizations, and similarly even in China. So that's one of the cultural aspects, I would say. I would like to highlight that. There is another cultural aspect which we can draw upon one research which was done by Hofstede Insight, which is in fact it was done in IBM in 30 countries, 13 nationalities, and they mapped down the cultural aspects in six vectors. Which is power distance, individualism, masculinity, uncertainty, avoidance, then long-term orientation and indulgence. So these are the six vectors, and this is usually used in the accounting system of any organization, especially in international businesses. I think it's very familiar with the accounting people are very familiar with it. However, in cybersecurity also it's very important to note that these organizational culture plays a huge role in adding to the kind of strategy we are building. For example, India in this power distance, I would say it's 77 rank out of the 100 scale, which means that we have a lot of power distance in an organization. Now it also shows that anybody who is down is not able to freely communicate their grievances and their problems to somewhere higher up in the organization. So there needs to be a mechanism where this power distance issue can be catered to for any organization, for that matter, for cybersecurity to also become because after all, a cyber attack that happens, it's an insider problem where people are negligent about the systems and they leak a lot of information outside the organization, and so we need to cater to this problem. There's also the aspect of individualism, which is almost balanced in India. But individualism, it has a more individual-oriented and not community or organization-oriented, culture. I think this adds to another cybersecurity dimension where it should be a collective effort where we are securing the organization for everybody's well-being and not just for the individual's sake. Of course, we have to take our privacy and all into consideration. That's another different aspect altogether. But there is, in terms of organization, we need to keep in mind that it's a team play. It's not just individual aspect. In terms of masculinity, I feel in India, it's quite high in terms of masculinity, which means that it's very result oriented. It's very goal oriented and very less people oriented. Which is the reason why in many organizations people feel left out. They feel because they feel uncared for. And again, this is due to a masculine approach in many organizations. And we need to take into consideration this aspect as well, because it adds to the cybersecurity dimension, where people might behave offensively if they are felt that way. So again, there needs to be care, there needs to be other dimensions that we need to put into an organization for better cyber resilience. Also, uncertainty avoidance is very less in India, which is around 40. And I would say Israel and other countries, they have around 80% as the uncertainty avoidance, which means that we need to start researching more. We need to start spending a lot on research in order to avoid any kind of risk taking in cybersecurity. So 40 is a very low number. We need to make it high, and that can only be done through research and development in this area. And by coming out with better solutions for the technical issues. There is also long-term orientation which is there, and also indulgence. Those are the two other vectors, but these four vectors are most important when we consider the cultural aspect of cybersecurity. Another small aspect I would like to touch upon here, sir, is the aspect of I think we need to also look into our own cultural aspects. Like, for example, we also, I think the MSME community would relate to this. There is the PARTH system, which many business community, the PARTHA system of accounting and monitoring, that is followed by the business community and the Banya community in India. Now, initially, it was also that, this was a very secure system where Modhiya language was used, and it was taught in specialized schools in India. And it was used so as to avoid any kind of, British, what do you say, indulgence in business process. And this, again, it's a very secure system, and it's fading away today, unfortunately. So probably looking into these cultural aspects of our own, our own national, and also probably getting some sort of standard or some sort of process in terms of by proper research in this area. I think that would also do, and I think this is very relatable. Yes.
Yes, Sanjana, if you can share.
I'm jumping the gun here, but I can't hold the emotion before I leave out of this dais to thank Alka and Sanjana for a very different learning on this call today. And I thought I'll not leave this dais before I steal 30 seconds from Suresh to tell that. The emphasis of R&D, like people from the born-up child to build till now, and Sanjana, I'm one of them who is doing a lot to do with empowering community. I never say empowering women. Men have to be empowered more. Sorry to say, right? Then women. But the R&D part which you brought up and what Alka started with the thought narrative is on a different way, which we all have to learn and find out from the research side of it, because we are some of the people who are thinking, how do we bring, and Suresh sir is from that community. That's why I thought to take that time from you to ask that from the education community, there is a lot to be done. Like there is something called Cyber Shiksha program, Microsoft runs with DSCI for underprivileged women. That's one part. Our intent is, or even individual as an Indian, I think, how do I make 1,000 women when there is a 2.5 million gap in cybersecurity from R&D and Center of Excellence. So Sanjana will be happy to learn from you later on, and Alka on the real, the natural way of security issue, not the tech way of security issue. So that's a learning for me. So sorry, I have to log off, but I thought.
That's okay. Hey, thanks, Deepak. I know you got to jump to other meeting, but thank you for joining. Sanjana, you know what we would like to look at is if you can post on the chat the scores, like when you said uncertainty uncertainty, what is that? Avoidance is 40, and then you said 77 on individualism and so on. If you can post the scores, see, and you bring in a subtle humor to the entire thing, which is very nice, to say, nothing has to be all serious. We should also have some fun when we're talking about things. And these are, see, when we talk about Indian culture, we talk about Indian culture being different. As long as it's different, fine. But if we are indifferent to things around us, it's very dangerous, very risky for us. And today, when you talk about leadership, when you talk about awareness, when you talk about creating that capability to build security, which Mr. Kamath, Mr. Heblikar, and Mr. Verma had actually spoken about, this adds a very important facet and perspective to the entire thing. So, if you can just post those scores on the chat for people to see. And I also would encourage people from the audience to please post questions. And if you're having problem, please reach out to Mr. Ashwin so that he can talk about. Now I'll quickly jump to Chinmay. Chinmay, I have two things to ask you. I will ask you the first one, and then I'll ask you the second one once you finish the answering first question is, when you actually talk about cyber security, we say built in is better than bolt on.
Exactly.
Yep. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, built-in, that's what while answering the initial first question, I have actually brushed up on a little bit on that aspect. Like, the security built-in starts with the design aspect, right? So maybe you are an MSME who are, building a product or building a solution, right? Or building a service model, right? So it is quite important to build the security from the design level, and then it continues as a horizontal approach. Then, okay, buy some products and then create an envelope or a wrapper and then try to, that is actually something of the sort of you are depending on somebody else, right? So instead of that, if you start thinking from the level of the design of the product and then development practices and creation of the, the product, and then after implementation, while implementing, you teach your customers that how can they practice the best, practices available in terms of security. Of course, I don't need to talk about what are all the practices available, but mainly I want to put this ideation as such that start from the design, and instead of buying something else. Of course, there are ways of risk transfers that is there. I think we are going to touch upon that particular point also, risk transfer, when I say insuring the things, right? So that is also another bolt on, right, aspect. Those are all postmortems, right? If we pay the attention to the preventive measures, like Deepak was very well touching upon on the point of, like, the basic hygiene, sanitation. It's not just only on the implementation side of it, it is starting from the building side of the product lines also. This is quite important aspect.
Thank you. And one question which will go to you and to Jaideep, but then there's one question I have specifically for Alka. The question I'm going to ask you, Deepak and Jaideep, you can also answer once Chinmay finishes this. Is when you talk about cybersecurity, largely we talk about IT, we talk about process and things like that. How do you involve OT in this? Because OT is such a critical component for most companies, especially in the MSME spaces, operation technology. So your thoughts on that, Chinmay, first?
Yeah. Well, so when you talk about OT aspect, I would not only talk about factories, I'll also talk about public utilities, right? So that's very important, because public utilities, factories or anything, it can be a loss of money or monetary loss. But when it happens on a public utility because of either your product or your implementation, then lives are lost, right? So we have probably read multiple kind of cases that, there is a speculation of there is a Chinese attack on Mumbai's power networks, and there was a blackout, right? So think about a blackout of entire country. And similarly, last year in USA, there was a case during the pandemic, hit, because pandemic has changed a lot of things, right? So even there was a water treatment plant which was actually, breached. The water treatment plant, if you change the levels, just it is tweaking about the levels, right? You make the water more acidic and people will fall sick and lives will be lost. That's quite important, right? So this is like, maybe all these instrumentations in the OT are nowadays, who are actually doing it, the predominant market is for MSMEs or the startups who come up with the innovative technologies, right? Quite important to secure yourselves, your product. In turn, you are securing your customers or the respective stakeholders' infrastructure and lives also, right? So this is the maybe a kind of a dimension that MSMEs have to think in terms of implementing OT, right? One. And second is when we come to the factory systems or the manufacturing systems or industrial systems, the security aspect, maybe it is not just only MSMEs, even the bigger of bigger, because we have witnessed these bigger of bigger customers of us also, they have not been taking it so seriously. Right? So it's quite important that a particular factory system or anything can be taken for a ransomware, right? So can be taken for a ransom by a ransomware attack. Then your business entirely is lost. The very prone, areas which are threat prone areas are these, in fact. So it's quite important to pay attention to, because typically OT companies or OT manufacturing companies or instrumentation manufacturing companies, they tend to ignore this because of lack of knowledge, right? So certain cases, hiring the expert consultative the services or maybe guidance, this will help very importantly, because of course MSMEs may not have all the bandwidth and funds and everything to gear up a respective IT, not IT, I'm saying OT security team or the cyber security team or infrastructural security team themselves, but they can go for, take the baby steps to reach there. That's quite important.
Right. So, Jaydeep, you want to add your ideas and thoughts to that? Specifically, I like the way Chinmay spoke about the public OT, which is very, very important today. And what are your thoughts on cybersecurity and OT?
So OT, I agree to Deepak. It is being used in the public sector as well as in most of the industries nowadays, be it pharmaceuticals, manufacturing, automobiles, everywhere they've been using OT now to automate various machinery tasks. And it is becoming a kind of integration between OT and IT. So a lot of systems of OT for all the different data that is getting generated is talking to IT systems. Maybe they are talking to different ERP systems with different sales systems. So a lot of different systems that they are talking to. So now that risk of securing both is becoming equally important. So again, going back to the same point, that you'll have to think of design. So while designing the security, we'll have to consider OT as part of the overall landscape. And we need to have the right controls and right solution for OT security as well. So maybe it is public or the industries, it is equally important for both to secure it in a right way with the right design.
Yes, the design is most crucial. Alka, coming back to you, one of the points which we spoke about at length at some point in time was the certifications, quote unquote, the certifications which organizations keep running behind. Is that something which MSMEs should look at getting certified, or is it something else that they have to look at when you talk about cybersecurity? You're on mute.
Thanks, Suresh. The experience with respect to certifications are good. And of course, there is a purpose of the certifications is in terms of to be able to communicate to each other as saying that at what level am I? And how do you really communicate, especially in the security world, be it in our certifications at the individual level or at the organization level. When we take certification, it's a way of communicating to each other that, okay, I am at this level. Right, so we have to create a language to be able to communicate to each other, and we need that language. So I don't think we can undermine the importance of certification. We need that language, but main aspect, which especially at the organization level, when we talk about that, okay, I am so and so certified, PCI certified, or like any certification, ISO 27000 or any certifications which is important to me for my business, right? When the certification starts taking the tag, that certificate starts taking priority rather than the spirit, is where we are seeing issues. Like the spirit, if it is totally not there, and when we are talking about that, okay, I need this certificate to get more business, which has become, right, because it's a language. So the language that, okay, I just need to show the certificate so that I get this business. But the security aspect of what exactly was required to get this certificate, that when it does not play importance, and we are seeing a lot of that when we are seeing that they become tick marks, that okay, the certification authorities have come with a lot of experience, and these tick marks or whatever questions they ask or whatever they guidelines they provide, they're guidelines with their experience, but they can't take over the spirit of my inside. That when I am saying that yes, I'll just take an example, which and then we can end there, Suresh. That recently there was an experience of PCI, and that is what I was sharing with you, PCI certification, where as a facilitator, we were saying that okay, what payment channels do you have? This is just one of the questions for the certification. Fair. Now these are guidelines and questions. Now only me as an organization can answer that correctly. Fair. The no certifier can ensure that you have answered it all correct, right? And if you have missed out one of the payment channels, because maybe the role who is responding to this question is not even aware of them, that is a possibility, right? And if you missed out even or your approach is that let me just get the certificate somehow and do the patchwork and show it, and I have stopped monitoring later that what exactly I have not understood the spirit behind it, and I have stopped monitoring. Once I got the certificate, I stopped monitoring. Right? Breach will happen. So we are seeing very clearly that it's very much seen that certificate is taken and a month later there is a breach. So certification with spirit is what ensures what really is that certification bringing on table, not just. So that is where what I was trying to share when I said that yes, certification is important. We cannot underline or undermine that certification, but the spirit is much more important if you're really looking for security as a goal.
Perfect. So I like to draw a parallel to that, Alka, saying that no, it is important that you take your vaccines, but also it doesn't mean that vaccine is going to protect you from COVID.
Wonderfully said. Wonderfully said.
All the way you're looking at. So certifications are definitely important, especially for MSMEs. If you're looking at a share of the market, like Dr. Chinmay was explaining, there's a huge 30% of procurement has to happen from MSMEs or startups. There's a huge market for Make in India. So if you're looking at leveraging that, you will have to first ensure that you are meeting all the guidelines and you are ready to take up something in this area. One question which I will ask Shashank. After that, I want to turn it to.
Sorry, one more point I forgot to mention there. Right. So now on all these public utilities, OT networks, Certain has started doing the probe, right? So anonymous probe, right? So that's very important as part of Cyber Swachhata Kendra. And first and foremost to be targeted or are targeted for this probe are the discoms, electrical discoms and water networks. Right, so that is where that typically it has started, and a lot of discoms have started receiving notices up till imposition of penalties or fines on them. Right, so this is a very important point I missed to mention at that time.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for that, Chinmay. Shashank, one question to you is, we have spoken about so many things, but one thing which we kind of did not touch upon, and yes, all of us can speak about that, but I thought I'll give the chance to you to talk about what is this dark web? Where are these people coming from who are attacking us? ये आके हमारे शहर को क्यों खराब करते हैं? Why are they doing this?
So it's a dark web is a parallel internet. It is hidden. And if you want to access the resources there, you need to go through a proper way. You need to use some Tor network to basically get to those websites. And there are forums where people, they sell the information. So all these hackers, they basically, once they compromise any organization, they dump the personal data, and then that data is being sold over darknet. And it's not the only thing which is sold over darknet. There are many other things which are available there. So all this data, and then after a few years, suddenly this news comes in media that, Big Basket was hacked, or, Yahoo was hacked. But that was hacked like few months back, or, a year back almost. But it was all there in the dark web. Once they recovered the certain amount of money they want to have, and then it being released to public. So it's a parallel internet, and it is nowadays, it is highly critical. Deepak was talking about security hygiene. Today, when we talk to our clients, we talk about going beyond security hygiene. where we say that it is very, very important to keep your eyes open to internet, not only the internet you see, also on the dark web. So you need to have a mechanism to track, is there any employee data, is there any company information, is there anything which is impacting your businesses there on darknet, available for sale or available for download. So it's important nowadays that the overall risk, overall threat landscape has changed over the years, and it's getting more and more complicated. So it's important to keep your eyes and ears open and know what is happening in the dark web. So not to be missed. That's a very, very critical point, which you, thanks for bringing it out.
Perfect. So I'm going to put in some closing comments now, and then I'm going to turn it over to Sai Pratyush for one question, and then he can take it forward to his discussions. So it was wonderful talking to all of you, and without fail, everyone in the panel actually aligned to their comments, which are more closely MSME rather than all over the place. And thank you very much for taking time from your busy schedules to be a part of this. Now, it tells us that very clearly that attacks are increasing. They're getting more sophisticated. And therefore, it is important for us to keep our guard up, look at and keep checking our vulnerabilities on a more regular basis to ensure that any entry, either it is web-based threats or any techniques or processes or procedures used against IT systems, do not get into our systems, either IT or OT, and break them down. Because once you break them down, and we have data which says that in 2020, 26% was the ransomware attacks, and this is specific to India. I'll tell you where this came from. And in 2021, it is 32%. It's increasing. Now, Sophos, which is a company which is into cybersecurity, had commissioned an independent survey, and they surveyed 5,400 IT decision makers across 30 companies, including India. And 50% of the respondents were in the 100 to 1,000 employees, and the 50% were from 1,001 to 5,000. Now, what they are saying is, not only the attacks are increasing, but 58% in 2021, 57% in 57% in 2021 were able to recover the data from their backups. So it tells you that there is a move towards getting more cyber efficient, I would say, cyber security efficient. But let me also tell you that, when we actually talk about ransomware, the amount of data on an average which is found that is returned by the people who actually hijack your systems or ransack your systems is only about 65%. You are definitely losing 35% of your data completely. And many times it is said that 10 companies hacked, out of 10 companies hacked, 7 to 8 companies don't recover completely. 2 companies fail to even continue their business and so on. So what we need to end this is to understand that if you're not hacked, be prepared that you'll be hacked. So what do you need now to do to make sure that you are stronger in terms of being resilient? Because if you're not stronger being resilient, you're going to lose whatever is there in the business. And it can be, if you're going to be losing a part of it, it can result in penal fines, and it can result in going to jail. It can mean losing your clients, brand negative visibility, and so on. Now, what we try to achieve in this is to look at a complete set of blocks, I may call it, when you talk about security. It has to be a security posture, it has to be a strategy, it has to be an execution, it has to be tactical. But most important of all these is to ensure that there is sponsorship and buy-in from the senior management, because they are the guardians and they have to then deliver the strategy back to the teams, and then they will go and do that. We do, between the team of professionals you see here, we do conduct periodic masterclass by sectors. We have plans to do that along with Fiki, and you'll be hearing more from that in that channel. Our solutions include consulting, advisory, technology support, training, and awareness. And with that said, I'll thank all of the participants, including the audience. I want to ask Sai Pratyush one question, and then you can take it forward. Sai, when you talk about many times it is like, a police and a traffic police. So when you talk about IT security and cyber security, what would you like to leave as a message for the MSMEs? What is the difference and where they should be focusing on for cyber security? Thanks.
Yeah, so thank you for that, Suresh. I think it's important for MSMEs to understand that security is a real concern today in today's world, and especially with this work from anywhere phenomena. Post the pandemic, your assets are being utilized, or your applications are being accessed through assets across, outside of your office environment, and that increases the chances of, security hacks. Trust your IT team. If you don't have an IT team, then reach out to experts, seek guidance, look at partners who can implement security solutions for you. It is absolutely critical that you make the necessary investments in security. A lot of CEOs don't necessarily see what's happening behind, if I can use the word firewall. But at the end of the day, these investments will only help the organization survive in the long term. If you don't do anything, the chances or basically you could be impacted in a very significant manner. So it's like insurance. You never know when it will hit you, but if you are insured and if you have taken security precautions, then I think you're on good standing. So that is what I would essentially say.
Thanks for that, Sai. Will you like to continue with the small discussion you wanted to have with the MSMEs, and then turn it over to Mr. Ashwini or Mr. Shaju for the vote of thanks and the wrap up, please? Thank you.
I'm good, Suresh. I'm good.
Okay.
We can turn it over.
Okay, thank you so much. Once again, thanks very much for the wonderful ladies and gentlemen on the panel. Thank you, the audience, for staying with us. Mr. Kamath, Mr. Heblikar, and Mr. Verma, thank you for the setting the tone and the pace for this. I thought it was kind of very focused on MSMEs. Mr. Shaju, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Suresh, for carrying on with an important and very vital points that you have raised, and conducting a good webinar. And I would also like to take this opportunity to thank all the panelists who have taken time to brief and explaining what are the threats that are posing to the MSMEs and how the solutions have been proposed. And also, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Tata Telebusiness Services for supporting this initiative. As you have mentioned earlier, we are also looking forward to have a masterclass series for the MSMEs through the hybrid, both physical as well as the web-based training program. We have got a very commendable response from industry across India. A lot of companies have joined for this webinar, and we are certainly looking for supporting the industry through a series of programs which can help them to counter such kind of threats that is posing through this cyber security aspects. So once again I thank you everybody for joining today's webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.